The scent of pine and anticipation always filled the air at the Anderson family Christmas gathering. I found myself in a quiet corner of my uncle's expansive living room, nursing a glass of sparkling cider that likely cost more than his estimation of my weekly earnings, observing the familiar familial theatrics. "So, Olivia," Uncle Jack's voice boomed, capturing the room's attention just as he preferred. "Still managing that quaint little boutique of yours? What's it called again? The Fashion something or other? Impress Collective?" "Impress Collective," I replied calmly, though my grip on the glass imperceptibly tightened. "And yes, it's thriving, actually. We've expanded to 5 locations this year, including a vibrant new space in Los Angeles." He chuckled, that specific laugh he reserved for making someone feel insignificant. "That's quaint. You know, if you ever truly want to understand real business, you should spend a day shadowing me at Anderson Technologies. See how the real players operate?" My cousin Marcus, Jack's son and heir apparent, sneered from his spot by the fireplace. He wore a suit that probably cost more than my first month's rent, but still managed to look like a child playing dress up. "I appreciate the offer, Marcus," I said, taking another sip of cider. "But I'm quite occupied with my own ventures." "Ventures?" Uncle Jack's eyebrows shot up. "Selling artisanal clothing isn't exactly what I'd call a venture, sweetheart. Now, take what we're doing at Anderson Tech. We just sealed a major deal with Microdyne Systems. That's real business." I noticed my father shift uneasily in his seat. He had toiled under his elder brother Jack at Anderson Technologies for 3 decades, always one rung below the top, always nearly, but never quite, good enough. The company had been founded by our grandfather, yet somehow Jack had manipulated his way into absolute control by the time he was 40. "The Microdyne deal," I mused aloud. "That's the one where you're supplying their new manufacturing line with custom processing chips, right?" Jack's eyes narrowed slightly. "Been keeping up with the business pages, have we?" Something like that indeed. What he didn't know, what none of them knew, was that I'd been doing far more than just reading. My little boutique was merely the visible tip of a vast, meticulously constructed iceberg. While they were busy underestimating me, I had built something beyond their wildest imaginings. My phone vibrated in my pocket, another urgent update from my real office. I excused myself and stepped into the hallway, leaving behind the sound of Jack regaling everyone with another tiresome tale of his latest business triumph. The message was from Sarah, my COO. "Sterling acquisition is complete. Legal just confirmed. We're ready to announce whenever you give the word." I smiled, anticipating what was to come. Sterling Industries was Microdyne's primary chip supplier, or at least they had been, until about 20 minutes ago. Now they belong to Nova Technologies, my company, the company no one in my family knew existed because I had built it under my mother's maiden name, Matthews. I re-entered the living room just in time to hear Uncle Jack pontificating about women in leadership. "Look," he was saying, gesturing emphatically with his whiskey glass. "I'm not saying women can't work, but certain industries demand a specific kind of thinking. Strategy, aggression, a killer instinct. It's just biology, really." My cousin Jessica, Jack's daughter, sat silently beside him. She held an MBA from Harvard and had been attempting to secure a management position at Anderson Technologies for 2 years, always met with Jack's excuses about her not being ready. "Speaking of strategy," I interjected, unable to resist, "what's your contingency plan if Sterling Industries unexpectedly alters their supply terms?" The room fell silent, the cheerful holiday chatter dying down. Jack stared at me as if I'd just uttered a foreign phrase. "Sterling? They're locked into a 10-year contract with Microdyne. Besides, they're a family-owned, old-school operation. They don't make waves, never have." I checked my watch. Interesting perspective. Just then, Jack's phone rang, then Marcus's. Then half the phones in the room began buzzing simultaneously. I watched as Jack's face transitioned from mild annoyance to profound confusion, to something akin to outright panic as he read whatever urgent message was on his screen. This has to be a mistake," he muttered, scrolling frantically. "Sterling just announced they're under new ownership, some company called Nova." His voice rose, tinged with disbelief. But that's impossible. I was just golfing with their CEO last week. Nova Technologies, I stated clearly, causing every head in the room to swivel towards me. Founded 5 years ago, specializing in next-generation processing solutions and strategic acquisitions, with a focus on disruptive innovation and ethical practices. Jack's face began to redden, a vein throbbing in his temple. How do you... I pulled up the Wall Street Journal app on my phone and held it out to him. There it was, in bold, undeniable headlines. Nova Technologies acquires Sterling Industries in surprise move. CEO Elizabeth Matthews signals aggressive expansion plans, poised to reshape industry. Elizabeth Matthews, I said quietly, allowing the name to hang in the air, is my mother's maiden name, and Nova Technologies is my company. You know, the one I built while you were all so busy laughing at my little boutique and dismissing my capabilities, assuming I was nothing more than a retail owner. The silence in the room was absolute, heavy with dawning realization. I could almost hear their minds racing, reevaluating every dismissive interaction we'd had over the past 5 years. That's not possible. Marcus sputtered, his face a mask of shock. You just sell clothes! I do, I agreed, a subtle smile playing on my lips. The boutiques are quite profitable, actually, but they're also excellent places to meet people. CEOs' wives, board members' daughters, even disgruntled former executives looking for new opportunities. You'd be amazed what valuable insights people share while trying on designer dresses. I turned to Uncle Jack, who looked on the verge of collapsing. By the way, about that Microdyne deal, you might want to call them. Since Nova now controls their chip supply, I imagine they'll be intensely interested in renegotiating terms, perhaps even a new long-term partnership that benefits both sides. You can't, Jack started, his voice a strained whisper, but his phone rang again, demanding attention. The caller ID read, Microdyne CEO. I gathered my coat and bag, ready to depart. But first, I turned to Jessica. I'm expanding my executive team at Nova. If you're interested in a challenging role where your Harvard MBA actually gets put to good use, call me Monday. We're building something truly different, a company that values innovation and merit. As I walked towards the door, I heard Uncle Jack's voice, smaller than I'd ever heard it before. Olivia, please, wait. I paused, hand on the doorknob. Sorry, Uncle Jack. I'd truly love to stay and chat, but I have a major merger to manage. You know how it is. Real business for real players, no time for parlor games or petty squabbles. The door closed behind me with a satisfying, definitive click, leaving behind a room full of people who were just beginning to comprehend that while they had been dismissing me, I had been diligently building an empire. And this was merely the prelude. Monday morning brought a carefully orchestrated chaos, precisely as planned. My phone showed 47 missed calls, mostly from various family members suddenly eager to catch up and offer belated congratulations. I sat in my true office, the one none of them had ever seen, on the 45th floor of downtown's most prestigious building, watching the sunrise paint the city skyline in hues of triumphant gold and rose. Miss Matthews? My assistant, Michael, appeared at the door, impeccably dressed. Microdyne's executives are awaiting you in the main conference room, and your uncle has been in the lobby for over an hour, demanding entry, quite insistently. I smiled, checking my reflection in the floor-to-ceiling windows. A sharp black suit, perfectly tailored, not a hair out of place. Power, but subtle, undeniably present. Let's not keep our esteemed guests waiting any longer. The conference room fell silent the moment I entered. 5 serious-looking men in expensive suits sat around the polished mahogany table, including Thomas Chen, Microdyne's CEO. Uncle Jack was notably absent. He was still downstairs, likely fuming that his name and reputation couldn't breach my building's security. Gentlemen, I said, taking my seat at the head of the table, commanding immediate attention. I believe we have some rather significant contracts to discuss, and a future to forge. Thomas Chen cleared his throat, a hint of unease in his demeanor. Ms. Matthews, or should I say Ms. Anderson, this is quite unexpected, a true surprise. Elizabeth Matthews is perfectly fine, Mr. Chen, I replied smoothly, meeting his gaze. Now, about Anderson Technologies' chip supply agreement. I've thoroughly reviewed the terms. They are, quite frankly, significantly below current market rates, and frankly, unsustainable for a long-term partnership. But we have a binding contract, one of their sharp-suited lawyers interjected, attempting to assert authority, a slight tremble in his voice. With Sterling Industries, I corrected, my voice unwavering. Sterling is now Nova Technologies, and while we will certainly honor existing agreements until their expiration, any renewal will be at prevailing market rates, plus a 20% premium for historical undervaluation and the advanced technology we're providing. Our innovation comes at a price. Thomas shifted uncomfortably, running a hand over his tie. That would significantly impact our bottom line, Ms. Matthews, a substantial increase in costs. True, I agreed, leaning forward slightly. However, Nova can offer something Anderson Technologies simply cannot, truly next-generation processing capability. Our R&D division has developed proprietary chips that are 40% more efficient and consume far less power, setting a new industry standard. We've kept that breakthrough quiet until now, allowing us a strategic advantage. I slid sleek, minimalist folders across the table to each of them. Inside were the detailed specs that made their eyes widen in genuine astonishment. 5 years of secret development, funded by the consistent profits from my little boutiques and some very strategic early investments in burgeoning tech startups. This is, Thomas started, picking up a document, his voice trailing off in awe. Revolutionary, I finished for him, a quiet triumph in my tone, and exclusively available to Nova's direct partners, providing them with an unparalleled market edge. So, gentlemen, shall we discuss new terms that benefit both our enterprises, leading to mutual prosperity? 2 intense hours later, I had signed a landmark deal that would effectively terminate Anderson Technologies' main revenue stream within 6 months, shifting it entirely to Nova. As the executives filed out, Thomas lingered for a moment. You know, he said quietly, a faint smile playing on his lips. Your uncle tried to convince me you were some kind of ruthless corporate raider, a novice. Said you had no real business experience beyond selling pretty dresses. I merely raised an eyebrow, inviting him to continue, my expression unreadable. And I just watched you command a room of seasoned executives like you've been doing it for decades, with an intelligence and foresight I rarely encounter. Truly exceptional, he concluded. Whatever else you are, Ms. Matthews, you're clearly your grandfather's true heir, in ways that have nothing to do with mere family lineage or a shared name. You embody his spirit of innovation. After they finally left, I allowed myself a small sigh of satisfaction before calling security to send Uncle Jack up. He burst into my office moments later, a storm cloud of fury in an expensive Italian suit. How dare you? He started, his face contorted with rage. You manipulative little... Careful, Uncle Jack, I cut him off, my voice calm but firm. You're in my building now, and I don't tolerate that kind of abusive language in my workplace, especially towards my employees. He deflated slightly, his gaze sweeping around my office, a space twice the size of his, boasting panoramic city views and modern art pieces individually worth more than his prized vintage car. How? He asked finally, his voice barely a whisper, defeat etched on his face. How did you do this without any of us knowing? Without any real capital to back such an audacious plan? I learned from you, actually, I replied, gesturing for him to take a seat, though he remained standing, rigid, unwilling to acknowledge my authority. All those years watching you manipulate and maneuver, thinking no one noticed your transparent schemes. I noticed everything. I just had a different, more patient, and ultimately more effective plan. The boutiques were perfect cover, and surprisingly, immensely profitable, providing the initial capital. It turns out when you treat people with genuine respect, listen to their diverse needs, and deliver true, tangible value, they become incredibly loyal customers and eager investors, willing to back your vision. His face darkened, a flicker of deep resentment in his eyes. "You're trying to destroy me, aren't you? To obliterate my legacy, everything I've built." "No, Uncle Jack," I countered, shaking my head. "I'm trying to build something infinitely better, something sustainable, ethical, and truly innovative for the future. You spent years telling me and Jessica, and frankly, every other capable woman in this family, that we weren't cut out for real business, that our ideas were quaint. I spent those same years meticulously proving you wrong, quietly building a robust foundation beneath your very feet. The Microdyne contract is being renegotiated as we speak, and they're moving all their chip supply to Nova. You might want to prepare your shareholders for that imminent announcement, as it will be quite significant." He slumped into the plush visitor's chair, suddenly looking years older, utterly defeated, his defiance completely drained. "What? What do you want from me?" "Want?" I smiled, a genuine, unburdened smile, free of malice. "I want you to go back to the Anderson Technologies office and explain to your entire board, without obfuscation, why you never saw this coming. I want you to tell Jessica, face to face, why you truly kept her out of management, denying her exceptional talent and Harvard MBA. I want you to experience, for the very first time, what it feels like to be underestimated, dismissed, and thoroughly outmaneuvered by someone you deemed insignificant." "I'll fight this," he threatened weakly, his voice a mere echo of his former bluster, devoid of conviction. "You can try," I replied, my gaze unwavering. "But first, you might want to look into who's been quietly buying Anderson Technologies stock over the past 3 years, steadily accumulating shares through a series of anonymous transactions. Here's a hint. Check under the name Matthews Investment Group." His face went ashen, all color draining from it as the full implication hit him. "How much have they acquired?" 28%, I stated, the number hanging in the air. Not enough for outright control, but certainly enough to make the next shareholders' meeting exceedingly interesting, to say the least, and to sway crucial votes. A precise knock at my door interrupted us. Jessica walked in, looking sharp, professional, and utterly determined, in a perfectly tailored suit that truly fit her new role and soaring aspirations. "Sorry I'm a bit late, Olivia," she said, not sounding apologetic in the slightest, her eyes gleaming with anticipation. "Traffic was simply dreadful getting across town, a real bottleneck." "Late?" Jack looked bewildered, his gaze darting between us, realization slowly, agonizingly, dawning on his face, like a cruel sunrise. "Yes," I confirmed, a sense of deep satisfaction filling me. "Jessica starts today as Nova's new Chief Strategy Officer. Her Harvard MBA will finally be put to excellent use here, where talent, not outdated prejudices, is truly valued and rewarded." "You can't just take my daughter!" he exploded, pushing himself out of the chair, his voice thick with indignation. "She's not yours to keep or take, Uncle Jack," I cut him off, my voice ringing with undeniable finality. "She's a brilliant, capable executive who deserves every chance to prove her worth and lead. Unlike you, I believe in promoting people based on undeniable talent, inherent merit, and genuine leadership potential, not outdated notions of gender or mere family connections." Jessica, cool and collected, placed a thick folder on my desk. "The preliminary audit of Anderson Technologies' project management systems, as requested. I found significant irregularities, glaring discrepancies, and potential unethical practices." Jack stood up so fast his chair nearly toppled over, a gasp escaping his lips. This is an utter betrayal, a conspiracy against me." "No, Uncle Jack," Jessica said firmly, her voice clear and strong, meeting his gaze directly. "This is simply business, conducted ethically and transparently. Isn't that precisely what you always taught us was the ultimate goal?" I watched my uncle storm out, defeated but still raging, a broken man, knowing this was just the very beginning. The real defining battle would undoubtedly unfold at the shareholders' meeting next month, a public display of power. But I was utterly ready. I'd been ready for years, preparing for this exact moment. "Well," Jessica said after he was gone, a dry amusement in her tone, "that was certainly dramatic and rather cathartic. "Welcome to real business, Jessica," I replied with a genuine smile, a sense of profound purpose fueling me. Now let's talk about phase two. Because while they thought the Sterling acquisition was my ultimate endgame, my final triumph, it was, in truth, merely my calculated opening move, the first domino to fall. I had 5 years of careful, meticulous planning to unveil, a strategic blueprint to execute, and a sprawling family empire to rebuild from its flawed foundations, this time under a very different, far more progressive and equitable kind of leadership. The game had just truly begun, and I was holding all the winning cards. The Anderson Technologies shareholders meeting was held in the exact same opulent hotel ballroom, where, 15 years ago, I'd sat in silent agony and watched my grandfather, whom I adored, hand control of the company to Uncle Jack instead of my more deserving father. I remembered every painful detail, sitting in the back row, barely out of college, watching the subtle but heartbreaking despair on my father's face, as his older brother usurped everything he diligently worked for and dreamed of, dismissing his contributions. Today, I sat confidently in the front row, a silent force to be reckoned with. The tension in the grand room was palpable, a live current crackling in the air. News of the Microdyne contract loss had hit Anderson Technologies like a meteor, leaving a gaping crater. The company's stock had plummeted 30% in just 2 weeks, wiping out significant shareholder value and trust. The shareholders were openly clamoring for answers, demanding immediate accountability, and Uncle Jack was visibly sweating under the bright stage lights, his usual composure completely gone, replaced by a nervous fidgeting. As you can see from our revised projections, he was stammering, his voice lacking its customary booming confidence, now thin and reedy. "We have several promising alternatives in development, new avenues to explore, innovative solutions to mitigate the losses." "What about Nova Technologies?" someone shouted from the middle rows, their voice echoing through the vast space, cutting through his nervous explanations. "Is it true they now control our entire supply chain for essential components, effectively holding us hostage?" Jack's panicked eyes darted through the crowd, desperately searching for an ally and then finding mine. I offered him a pleasant, almost serene smile, a silent taunt. "We are indeed in active negotiations with Nova, seeking a new partnership," he managed to stammer, his voice thin, barely audible. "Is it also true that Nova's highly successful CEO is your niece?" another enraged shareholder demanded, standing abruptly, his face flushed with anger. "The very same niece you repeatedly denied a position on the board, publicly dismissing her capabilities as insufficient?" Before he could even attempt a response, the large ornate doors at the back of the ballroom opened with a dramatic flourish, drawing all attention. My father walked in, his shoulders back, his head held high, a beacon of quiet strength, followed by a formidable team of sharp-suited lawyers, each carrying thick, incriminating briefcases. "Right on schedule," I murmured to myself, a thrill of anticipation running through me, the culmination of years of planning. "Ladies and gentlemen," my father announced, his voice carrying across the suddenly silent room with undeniable authority, a resonant declaration. "I have here documents that should be of paramount interest to all of you, particularly to the board members present and every loyal shareholder." He began systematically distributing thick folders to each of the board members seated at the long table, their faces a mixture of confusion and growing dread. I watched Jack's face as he opened his copy, saw the precise moment he realized the damning nature of what he was reading, his expression crumbling. These meticulous records show systematic discrimination in hiring and promotion practices, spanning years, a pattern of exclusion. My father continued, his voice clear and resonant, gaining momentum. "They also meticulously detail irregular accounting of project funds and egregious misallocation of resources over the past decade, amounting to potential fraud. All of these actions, I might add, were approved directly by our current CEO, Mr. Jack Anderson, who has been operating with impunity." The room erupted into absolute chaos. Board members were frantically flipping through pages, their faces aghast with shock and betrayal. Shareholders were shouting questions, hurling demands, and outright accusations, a furious chorus. Through it all, I remained perfectly seated, utterly calm and composed, an unmoving observer to the inevitable righteous fallout. "This is a trick!" Jack shrieked over the deafening cacophony, his voice hoarse with desperation. "A conspiracy! A malicious fabrication between my brother and my niece to unfairly undermine me." "To what, Uncle Jack?" I stood finally, walking purposefully toward the stage, a calm, unwavering determination in my stride, every step asserting my dominance. "To expose the truth, perhaps? To show how you've been running this venerable company like your own personal autocratic kingdom, prioritizing nepotism, outdated prejudices, and self-enrichment over talent, progress, and shareholder value." I gently took the microphone from his trembling hand, his grip weak and yielding. The room miraculously quieted, eager to hear my every word. "My name is Olivia Anderson," I stated clearly, my voice projecting confidence and undeniable authority, resonating with conviction. "Though some of you may more recently know me as Elizabeth Matthews, CEO of Nova Technologies, a rapidly ascending force in the industry." A collective gasp rippled through the audience, a wave of recognition and surprise. 15 years ago, I sat quietly in this very room and watched my grandfather's cherished legacy being twisted into something he never, ever intended, a shadow of its former self. Today, I am here to fundamentally restore it to its rightful place, to its original vision of innovation, integrity, and genuine leadership. I nodded subtly to my waiting lawyers, who then began distributing another, equally substantial set of documents, sealed with Nova Technologies' official emblem. "What you are receiving now," I announced, sweeping my gaze across the room, encompassing every face, "is a comprehensive, compelling, and mutually beneficial proposal. Nova Technologies is offering to merge fully with Anderson Technologies, a complete restructuring of leadership, new forward-thinking management teams, and the immediate implementation of the next-generation processing technology that Microdyne, a major industry player, has already enthusiastically signed on for, securing our future market position." The room buzzed, then erupted, with renewed excited chatter, a palpable shift in sentiment. These were astute business people after all. They could clearly see the immense potential, the clear path to salvation, the lifeline being offered. This merger, I explained, would not only rescue the company from its current downward spiral, but strategically position it as an undisputed market leader in cutting-edge tech innovation, a true powerhouse. The esteemed Anderson name would remain, I assured them, preserving tradition. But the company culture would undergo a radical, much-needed transformation, shedding its toxic past. No more discrimination, no more pervasive nepotism, no more anachronistic old boys clubs stifling talent and progress. "You can't do this," Jack sputtered, his face ghostly pale, his voice a desperate croak. "The board would never agree to such terms. They would refuse." Actually, one of the most respected board members, a woman known for her shrewd business acumen and unwavering integrity, stood up decisively, cutting him off. "Given these utterly damning revelations and the company's precarious current financial position, we are not only obligated, but morally compelled to consider any offer that could genuinely protect shareholder value and secure our future prosperity. Our duty is to the company, not to outdated power structures." And with Matthews Investment Group's 28% stake, another equally influential shareholder added, his voice firm and resonant, "combined with the overwhelming number of proxy votes Ms. Anderson has already painstakingly secured through her tireless efforts, I believe she unequivocally has the numbers required to pass this motion. A clear majority." I turned to face my uncle directly, my eyes meeting his defeated gaze, holding it until he flinched. "You told me to stick to my little shop, Uncle Jack. You said real business was exclusively for men, for the big boys with their aggressive tactics. Well, Uncle Jack, this is real business, and you've just been decisively, strategically outmaneuvered by a girl who dared to sell dresses and build an empire from the ground up. The subsequent vote was almost unanimously in favor, a resounding mandate for change. By the end of the long, emotionally charged day, I was standing in my grandfather's old office, which was now unequivocally my office, looking out over the sprawling, vibrant city below, a symbol of my new domain. The cherished portrait of him still hung on the wall, his kind eyes seeming to twinkle with a profound sense of approval, a silent, powerful validation of my actions. A soft, deferential knock at the door interrupted my contemplative thoughts. It was Jessica, carrying a chilled bottle of celebratory champagne and two gleaming glasses, her face radiating pride. "So," she said, pouring the sparkling wine, a triumphant glint in her eyes, "CEO of both Nova and Anderson Technologies. Not bad at all for someone who was supposedly destined to stick to retail, relegated to the sidelines, wouldn't you say?" I laughed, taking a glass, the bubbles tickling my nose, a genuine feeling of joy bubbling up. "How's your father adjusting to all this momentous change?" "He's adjusting surprisingly well, all things considered," she replied, a faint smile on her lips. The board's rather generous severance package certainly helped soften the blow of his forced departure, though I think his ego took a much bigger hit when they officially named me Chief Operating Officer of the newly merged entity, a position he always coveted. "You earned it, Jessica," I said firmly, clinking my glass against hers, a bond forged in shared experience. "And not because you're his daughter or my cousin or because of any legacy. You earned it because you are undeniably brilliant at what you do, a true leader in your own right." We clinked glasses again, then stood side by side, looking out at the magnificent sunset painting the sky in glorious shades of victory, a promise of new beginnings and a brighter future. "You know," Jessica said thoughtfully, after a comfortable silence, a deep insight in her voice, "I kept wondering all these years why Father never truly fought back, never truly challenged them, when they so casually dismissed you and his own immense potential. Now finally, I understand. You, Olivia, were playing the incredibly long game all along, a master strategist." "I learned something profoundly important running those boutiques, Jessica," I replied, a sense of deep wisdom in my voice echoing through the years. "Success isn't always about being the loudest voice in the room or the most overtly aggressive player, the one who dominates. Sometimes, the most potent strategy is about being extraordinarily patient, meticulously observant, and quietly building something so fundamentally solid, so undeniably powerful, that they simply cannot ignore it when you finally choose to reveal its true scale. The element of surprise is often the most formidable weapon in business." My phone buzzed softly, pulling me momentarily from our reverie, a reminder of the ongoing work. Another message from Thomas at Microdyne, confirming our newly expanded partnership and expressing his excitement for future collaborations. A true ally. On my polished desk, the Wall Street Journal's stark, bold headline screamed, "Nova Anderson merger reshapes tech landscape. CEO Elizabeth Matthews makes history as visionary leader. A new era begins." To the thriving future of Anderson Technologies. Jessica raised her glass, a genuine warmth in her smile, looking towards the horizon. "To doing business our way," I corrected, a subtle but significant distinction in my voice, a declaration of a new philosophy. "On our terms, with integrity, true innovation, and a commitment to people." Later that night, as the city lights twinkled like scattered diamonds below, and the sounds of the bustling metropolis faded, I drove to my grandfather's grave. I carefully placed a fresh copy of the merger announcement, unfolded and pristine, against his weathered headstone. "You always said the company needed new blood, grandfather," I whispered, my voice thick with emotion. A promise fulfilled. I hope, truly hope this is what you meant, what you envisioned for our legacy. As I drove home, the familiar streets blurred past. My mind drifted back to the journey, the struggles, and the triumphs. I thought about the little girl who used to sit silently in stifling board meetings, diligently taking notes while everyone else pointedly ignored her, dismissing her presence. The young woman who bravely opened a seemingly insignificant little boutique, all the while secretly, painstakingly building an empire of unprecedented scale and influence, brick by silent brick. And finally, the confident CEO who had, at long last, shown them all what real business truly looked like, on her own terms, redefining success. Uncle Jack, in a twisted way, had been right about one thing. Business was indeed about strategy and aggression. He just never, in his narrow worldview, realized that sometimes the most aggressive, most impactful move is the one your opponent never, ever sees coming, hidden in plain sight. And as for that original little shop, the Impress Collective, I kept it running, not for profit now, but as a cherished reminder of where it all started, a symbol of humility and ambition. Because sometimes, the biggest, most resounding victories come disguised as the smallest, most unassuming beginnings, teaching invaluable lessons along the way.